So it's very important to begin by setting a very pure and strong motivation, and just think that for the sake of reaching enlightenment, in order to benefit all mother sentient beings who are as vast as the vastness of space, I am here to study the text called The Essence of Refined Gold, that is composed by the conqueror Sonam Gyatso. It is Lam Rim that follows the tradition of Je Rinpoche's Lam Rim texts that are of various lengths, but they all include the major points, all the crucial points of the presentation that is found in the 84,000 bundles of teachings of Buddha Shakyamuni himself. Having set such a pure motivation makes a very big difference, because then through the strength of this motivation, the activity that we engage in becomes the cause for obtaining the state of Buddhahood. It becomes the cause for generating bodhicitta. It becomes the cause for accumulating a massive amount of accumulation of merit and wisdom that eventually become the causes for obtaining the form body and the Dharma body of the Buddha. So having this in mind, the great difference that the pure motivation makes, please adjust your motivation at the beginning. So we are going back into our text. We mentioned that if you look at the extensive Lam Rim, you will find the two major outlines. The first one is how to properly rely on the spiritual teacher, the root of the path. And then the second outline is, having relied on the teacher, how do you actually train on the path? So we see here that there is a very special feature, the feature of having outlines. Outlines are very important, because even if you don't know fully the meaning of every subject matter, if you have the outlines clear in your mind, you can perform this revision meditation, which is like a bullet point. You're going through all the subjects in your meditation, and that is very important. This is not a feature that was present in India, in the Indian texts, but we see that it is pervasive in the Tibetan texts. All the Tibetan texts really provide the outlines, and this is a special feature that Je Rinpoche introduced, and it is for the sake of developing knowledge and wisdom and sharpening your wisdom. So we have already talked about the first one of the outlines, which is the proper way to rely on the spiritual teacher, the root of the path. So this expression, the root of the path, it indicates how important it is. If you want to reach a state of Buddhahood, that is the ultimate goal, but also in order to generate the various realizations of the Lam Rim topics, you have to rely on the root, which is this relationship with the spiritual teacher. So the importance of the teacher here is emphasized both in terms of practicing Dharma and in everyday in everyday life, right? Non-Dharma, everyday life. In terms of those who are very kind for us in this life, we have to recognize our parents as being very kind, and then our teachers who educate us in whichever level of education, whichever school, whichever subject we are studying. Obviously, the parents are very kind to us in this life. They raise us with great kindness. They protect us. They provide for everything that we need. And but the other thing is that the teachers, as the one who give us the knowledge, who train us in all the subjects that we need to be trained. So the teachers are extremely kind because they remove that confusion, that ignorance we have with respect to so many subjects. So someone might think that I'm not a small child anymore, I'm an adult now, I don't need to rely on a teacher. And this material, this text exists in an English translation, exists in Chinese translation. I can read it myself. It's not so difficult to understand. I don't need to rely on a teacher. And that might be true. Of course, if you read those texts, you will develop understanding of a lot of subjects. But we see here that in the Lam Rim, it is emphasized that it is crucial that we rely on the spiritual teacher. And the reason for that is because by relying on the teacher, we receive the blessing, the stream of blessing that comes through the lineage of instructions, and we're able to accumulate merit. So to build up our accumulations, we need to rely on the teacher. Okay, so we have explained here how we visualize the spiritual teacher in front of us at the center or as the main figure of the merit field. And then having visualized the guru there, we understand that we rely upon him and that we are ready to practice exactly according to his or her instructions. And if we do in this way, we will be able to amass the accumulation that is necessary to generate the realizations of the path. So as a means of doing this, we engage in the practice of the 7 limbs, so the 7 limb prayer. We have said that the 7 limb prayer actually includes all the crucial points for accumulating everything that needs to be accumulated, merit and wisdom and every way of accumulating those things. Now, we find this practice of the 7 limb prayer both in the sutric context and the tantric context. There's slightly difference in the presentation of Tantra. We find it in many different texts, such as, for example, the Bodhisattva's ways of life, and we find it in Samantabhadra prayer, we find it in Lama Chopa, we find it in Ganten Lagema, and so forth. But we notice that there is a slight difference in these texts, in the order of presentation of those 7 limbs. So, for example, in Ganten Lagema, we see that the requesting not to pass into paranirvana, which is the 6th in the list, is actually the first one that we do. In Bodhisattva's ways of life, we see that first one is making offerings, and the second one becomes the prostrations. Whilst the usual order is first we make prostrations, then we make offerings. The thing is, in terms of offerings, as we say, we have surpassable and unsurpassable offerings. And there are 12 different types. And Bodhisattva's ways of life actually begins with offerings or explains the offerings first. Then we see that there's a difference between, in Samantabhadra prayer, we have the usual order. First we prostrate, then we make offerings, we confess negativity, then we rejoice, then we request to attend the wheel of Dharma, request to remain in paranirvana, and then we dedicate. Now, in the tantric presentation, there's a slight difference. The first 4, which is prostrate, make offerings, confession, and rejoicing, are the same. But then, in addition to that, we have the 4 immeasurables and refuge and bodhicitta. So it is good to know the differences. So we talking about the 7 limb prayers, we have seen that in the Lam Rim, the presentation of the order of those 7 limbs is according to Samantabhadra prayer. So first of all, we prostrate, then we make offerings, then we have confession, rejoicing, requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma, requesting not to pass into paranirvana, and dedication. We have already talked about prostrations and making offerings. And Geshe said, today I would like to talk about confession. Now, we notice that in the Essence of Refined Gold, we don't have a presentation of those things. They are not specifically presented. But Geshe says, if you look into Lamrim Chenmo, for example, there's a very detailed presentation. And Geshe says, I feel uncomfortable not mentioning those things, that they have such a prominent position in Lamrim Chenmo. Now, of course, you're Buddhist and you know about the 7 limb prayers. This is not new information, what you will hear here. But Geshe says, just to remind you, refresh your memory, and perhaps if there is something that is unclear, perhaps it will become clearer. So that's all we're doing. Okay, so we have talked about the prostrations, we have talked about the offerings, so we want to talk a bit more about confession. So what we are confessing here is negativity, and the reason why confession is so important is because we're always ready to accumulate negativity, right? We're always on the verge. Negativity comes very easy to us. The reason for that is because we have very strong self-cherishing. We always think me, 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 me. It's very difficult for us to generate any thoughts of cherishing others. In addition to our self-cherishing, we have self-grasping, and that brings along all other afflictions, our attachment, our hatred, our ignorance, and so forth. And motivated by these things, and these things are constantly generated in our mind, so we're constantly motivated by them, so we accumulate negativity. There is great benefit of confessing that negativity. It needs to be removed. There is great fault if we do not confess it. If we do not confess it, we don't have the benefit. And for as long as it remains there, it acts as an obstacle that doesn't allow us to reach a state of Buddhahood or progress. Okay, so it's very important to engage in confession of negativity, but confession of negativity is something that we should take seriously. So it's not just like the passing thought, oh, let me purify, confess some negativity. It's not like this. It has to be done properly. Done properly means there are some preliminaries, then there is the actual part of confessing, then there is a conclusion of confessing. And for a confession to be complete, we must generate the 4 opponent powers that are antidotes. So the first one is the power of reliance. The second one is the power of repudiation. The third one is the power of restraint, not to do it again in the future. And the fourth one is the power of actually applying the antidote. In Bodhisattva's Ways of Life, in the second chapter, where we have confession, it begins with the second of those opposing powers, which is the power of repudiation. But it doesn't matter, which one you begin. In any case, here we will proceed with a general, the usual presentation, where the first opponent power is the power of the basis. So we have to begin, first of all, by visualizing the field of accumulation. The main figure there is our kind root guru, but he has the aspect of Buddha Shakyamuni, who is surrounded by Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and so forth. Okay, so having visualized the field of accumulation, meditating on bodhicitta, meditating on compassion, meditating on refuge becomes the power of the basis. Okay, so it's a short presentation, yeah? Mm-hmm. So the second one is the power of repudiation. The power of repudiation here refers to generating very strong regret. So to be clear, without regret, there can be no confession. Okay, so regret is very important. So regret means here that we have to recognize how much negativity we create every single day of our life, every hour of every single day. The thing is that when we look at ourselves, we only see qualities. We don't see any fault in ourselves. But when we observe others, we always pick up faults. Oh, look at the way they walk. They don't walk straight. Oh, look at the way they're dressed today. Oh, look at the way they're talking. Oh, look, they're doing this, they're doing that. We're just picking up faults all the time. So as a result of that, there is a certain way that we relate to others. So sometimes it's our facial expression. Sometimes it is the words that we use when we communicate with others, and so on and so forth. And through this attitude and these activities, we keep creating negativity all the time. And this is something we have been doing since beginningless time. So there is a lot of negativity accumulated there. So you think, today I have visualized the field of accumulation and generate regret for all this negativity. The third one is the fold of restraining, the third one is the antidote of restraining our faults. Okay, so when we use the word fault here, the fault does not refer to some physical, let's say, imperfection. Right. So whatever, you could have too many freckles on your face, or perhaps your tone skin is not the perfect one. So we're not talking about physical faults. Okay. Obviously, we're talking about all these mistakes that we are doing. The most important thing here is, first of all, to recognize them as fault, and to understand that if we continue with this behavior in our future lives, definitely we will have to experience the results of these type of negative actions. So there will be result concordant with the cause, there will be result concordant with the action, there will be environmental result, and so forth. All of these results we will have to experience. So now that we have visualized the guru and all the other figures of the field of accumulation, we make a prayer or the promise that says, I will not repeat this in the future. So the last one is the opponent power of fully applying the antidote. In the Lam Rim, we have a presentation of list of different activities that can become the antidote. The important thing is that whatever of these activities we engage with a proper motivation of bodhicitta or great compassion for others. So then what can become the antidote? Meditating on bodhicitta, meditating on compassion, reciting the names of the Buddha, doing mantra recitations, reading texts, things like that. The important thing that we said here is that all those activities have to be done with the right motivation. If, for example, you engage with these activities with the motivation thinking, I just want to make sure I don't have any sickness in this life, I want to make sure I have wealth in this life, and so forth. These things do not become an antidote with such motivation. Actually, this motivation doesn't make your activity even Dharma activity. Again, you could have a different motivation, such as thinking, I want to be free from the suffering of samsara. With this motivation, your activities become the cause to reach the Hinayana enlightenment, which is a state of an arhat, as a hearer or a solitary realizer. Okay, so when we apply the antidotes, the four opponent powers, who is harmed here? It is the three poisons, the afflictions. Okay, so let's look at how each one of the seven limbs becomes an antidote to an affliction. So for the first one, prostrations become an antidote to pride. And that should be obvious, because what we do here is we visualize the field of accumulation. They are higher from us, physically higher, but also we have high esteem for them, and we make ourselves lower. We actually prostrate at their feet. So obviously this becomes antidote to a sense of pride that we have, afflicted pride. The second one, offerings, becomes an antidote to miserliness. Okay, so if you can train yourself to mentally give and give abundantly, give a lot, then this becomes a very good training so that eventually you can physically give things to others as well. The next one is confession, and confession becomes antidote to three afflictions. It becomes an antidote to attachment, to hatred, and also pride. The next one, for rejoicing, it becomes an antidote to jealousy, because when we rejoice in our own virtue, but also in the virtue of others. So sometimes we feel competitive, or we have jealousy for others who, let's say, are in the same class with us, because they're doing better than us. But if you can rejoice and say, here they are, they practice Dharma, they practice it really well. So if you rejoice in that, it stops you from generating jealousy. The next one is the requesting to turn the wheel of Dharma. That becomes an antidote to the negativity of abandoning Dharma. So we have to be very careful, because we abandon Dharma every time we give in and criticize, let's say, a section of the Dharma. Even as we are Buddhists, sometimes we make this distinction. Oh, Hinayana is better than Mahayana, or Mahayana is better than Hinayana, or Sutra is better than Tantra, or no, Tantra is better than Sutra, and so forth. But of course, there is division or deriding, let's say, the religious or the beliefs of other people in the society. And this is something that happens quite a lot. It is very important that we generate this attitude that we, as humans, we are the same, we are equal. because all of us want to have happiness and nobody wants to experience suffering. So once you start from that point of equality, there should not be any division in society in terms of religion, in terms of race, in terms of social status, and so forth. Requesting the gurus not to pass into paranirvana becomes an antidote to criticizing, deriding the Lama, and so forth. So this refers to a case where first you have made the decision to rely upon this person as your guru, and after you have relied, then you start criticizing, showing disrespect, and so forth. The next one is to dedicate, and dedication becomes an antidote to anger. So whichever one of these 7 limbs we engage, it is very important to do it with the recognition of the 3 rounds of the non-observed. So what that means, we'll give you an example. You're offering, let's say, flowers to the field of accumulation. So it's very important to understand that me, who is the person who is making the offering, all these figures in the field of merit that are the recipients of my offerings, and whatever substance I'm offering, whether it is the flower, the fruit, the money, whatever, all these 3 things, they lack inherent existence. However, nominally they exist since they are merely imputed. If you can engage in these activities with the recognition of the 3 rounds of the non-observable, then you can accumulate a vast amount of accumulation. But if you don't do it in this way, if you think that I truly exist and the field of merit truly exists and the flowers that I offer, they truly exist, then this does not become a cause for the great accumulation. On the contrary, it can become the cause for lower rebirth. So you see, for example, when you offer a flower with faith towards the field of merit, you amass the accumulative merit. But if you combine this with the aspect of wisdom, which is an understanding of emptiness with the 3 rounds of the non-observable, then this counts towards your accumulation of wisdom. So as well. So it makes a difference. So it's very important to look at negativity. Negativity itself is not a quality, quite the opposite, but it does have a good quality, and that is, if it is confessed, it can be removed, it can be purified. So the great texts mention this, and we can see examples of this in the stories of great saints and great personalities. So, for example, we know Milarepa. Earlier on in his life, he relied on the wrong type of teacher, and this teacher taught him how to do magic, and he applied this magic, and he caused incredible hailstorms that caused many houses in his village to be destroyed. And as a result of that, 33, 34 people died. So he created a lot of negativity earlier on. However, later in his life, he met the amazing teacher Marpa, and due to their karmic connection and the instructions he received, he was able to purify this negativity. You must have heard the story of how Marpa asked him to build him a house, and then made him take away, undo whatever building he had done, take away the stones, then build the house in another shape, then again undo it, and so forth. So this, due to the karmic connection and the faith that Milarepa had for Marpa, acted as the means of purifying his negativity, and he obtained the supreme state of enlightenment in that one lifetime. Another example, another story that illustrates this is the story of Angulimala, who had received this instruction, again from a wrong teacher, a bad teacher, that if you could kill 1,000 people and make a necklace from the cut fingers of those 1,000 killed people, he would obtain those special powers. So he had already killed 999, and he was only missing one last one, and the only person around left was his mother, so he was thinking of killing his mother. But it was at this point that the Buddha intervened and explained to him that, this is not a proper practice, this won't lead anywhere, and led him through a process of purification so that he reached the state of an arhat in that life. Okay, can we bring the text up? All right, so the essence of refined gold. Okay, so we are talking about the preliminary practices. We have finished the 5th preliminary practice, which is the 7 limbs prayer plus the mandala offering. And then the next one, number 6, is making requests, making prayers. Okay, so we will make prayers here to the different lineages that we visualize in the field of accumulation. So we're at the bottom of page 5 of the Essence of Refined Gold, where we start with these requesting prayers. So as we say here, we will make a request to the different lineages, although we did not have the chance to directly meet all these masters. However, indirectly, we rely on their speech, on their instructions. We rely on their texts, especially since we engage the Lam Rim practice. Definitely, we follow the instruction of the lineage of profound view and the lineage of extensive conduct. Therefore, it is important always to make requests to these 2 lineages. Okay, so we are reading. It says the essential points of purification and accumulation are summarized in the 7 limb practice. So we have done this. And then commencing with all the conquerors assemble with a single Buddha and so forth. And then we begin with making the request. So the line that begins with the great compassionate Sugata Vajradhara, the supreme all-seeing Tilopa, and etc., etc. This is the request to the blessed essential lineage. Then the line that says Maitreya, Sangha Vasubandhu, Vimuktisena, and so forth. There's another verse. This is for the lineage of the vast conduct. And the Bodhisattva Nagarjuna, who eliminated the extremes of existence and non-existence, and so forth. This is for the lineage of profound view. And then we say, before the conqueror is Tisha and our virtuous spiritual friends, such as Drumtompa and so forth. And then we do Migmetsewetenchechenerezik, Migtsema. So this is for Lama Tsongkhapa and the teachers of the scripture and reasoning and so forth. And then we continue with the verses that begin with wisdom of immense strength and profound physical strength spreads. Then marvelous visual elaboration. Next, fulfills all needs and wishes. Next, teaching the above to us. Next, the unsurpassable teacher, the precious Buddha. And going up to the point where it says, with compassionate, skillful means, you took rebirth in the lineage of Sakyas and so forth. So then it says, offer as many prostrations as one can. So here we have the presentation of the field of accumulation. You can do it according to Lama Chöpa and according to the Lam Rim, which is very easy, clear to follow. So as it says here, we offer as many prostrations as possible. And then it says after that, offer either the 37 or the 7 hip mandala, whichever is suitable, and follow that with further offerings. So we have mentioned here of the mandala offering. Mandala offering is a very important practice in Tantra and, of course, in Sutra. If you're doing Tantric practice, if you want to do the Lerung, the approximation retreat, prior to that, you must establish preliminaries. Traditionally, each of those preliminary practices is done 100,000 times. So 100,000 times of prostrations, of refuge, of Vajrasattva, of mandala offerings, and so forth. All of you have been in Bodh Gaya, and you have seen all these, monks and nuns from other countries like Taiwan, Korea, and so forth, working very hard on accumulating their 100,000s of mandala offerings and so forth, isn't it? So in terms of the material, what you use or how do you make the mandala offering? We know that Manjushri gave instructions to Lama Tsongkhapa to go into retreat with a small number of close disciples. And Lama Tsongkhapa and his disciples went into retreat in a location called Olka. In Olka, let's say their wealth or what the possessions they had were very limited. So Lama Tsongkhapa offered mandalas by using stone as the basis of the mandala. So anyway, there are many examples of mandala offerings and so forth. That's one to keep in mind. So Geshe was saying, I have to say that I was very impressed when I saw all these Asian practitioners from Singapore, from Taiwan, from Korea, when they were doing their prostrations or the mandala offerings, they had that single pointedness. Like you could see, they were not chatting, they were not talking with each other, they were not looking right and left. They were just very focused, which is something that is very impressive. And this is what we are advised to do. When you practice Dharma, you focus your mind into this activity. As Geshe says, we Tibetans are a bit relaxed about this. So there's a lot, when we do our prostrations and mandala offerings, we talk to each other, we look around, what's happening, checking other people, looking around. So we're a bit more relaxed, but that actually indicates that the mind is not focused, the mind is distracted. So in terms of the material for making the mandala set, because the offering of the mandala is for the sake of accumulating merit, if you can afford expensive material, the best you can afford is advisable. So gold or silver or any other precious substances. But of course, if you cannot afford, like let's say gold or a silver mandala set, at the very least, you can use an ordinary metal plate as a basis of your mandala. In terms of the substance that you have inside the mandala set, again, because it is for the sake of building up your accumulation, if you can afford things like lapis and coral and pearls and things like that, it would be very good to fill your mandala with these things. If not, you can use other substances, like at the end you can use different grains or even white pebbles or white stones. That make sure you clean them first and then you use them. So in this way you can accumulate merit. And of course, again, when we make the mandala offering, the motivation is very important. So thinking that you offer everything that you possess and enjoy together with your root of virtue of your body, speech, and mind for the sake of reaching the state of Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings as vast as the vastness of space is very important. Okay, now, when we actually make the hips in the mandala offering, depending on what is the reason why we are making the mandala offering. So if it is together with the 7 Lam prayers as an offering, right? So you just want to offer to the guru, then the first heap, handful of material, you would put it to the east, that is in front of you, not right in front of you, like in front and away from you, because you are offering to the guru who is in the space in front of you. Okay. However, if you're making a request to the guru in order to receive the blessing of the body, speech, and mind of the guru, and to symbolize that the blessings are coming your way, the first heap you put closer to yourself, right? In the round thing, it's closer to yourself to receive. Okay, so as you can see here, it says you either offer 37 or 33. It says 37 or 7 heaps, but we also have the tradition of 33 heaps of mandala. So Master Naropa, Abhayagara and Je Rinpoche offered the 33 heap mandala. So they include the 4 continents, the 8 subcontinents, the 7 precious, the 7 royal and precious substances, the precious vase, and then above that we have the sun and the moon, and the banner of victory, the umbrella and the banner of victory. If you make it 37, you add also the goddesses. When we offer 100,000 mandala recitations, obviously you're not going to do the extensive one, you do a short one, which is the one with the 7 limbs. So with the 7 limbs, you have Marmero, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. So although we mentioned that there are different sort of like elaborations or a shorter version of mandala offering. Just see them as a variation of some being more extensive, other being more condensed. There is no contradiction between those systems, like the 37 or the 3 or the 7 hips. Now, we also mentioned that the practice of mandala offering is very important in Tantra. In Tantra, when we talk about mandala offering, we talk about the external, the internal, the secret, and suchness mandala offering. So in Guru Puja, we have a presentation of the 33 hips, as we have described it here. When we talk about the external mandala, again, is like placing those hips, those 33 hips, as we have explained. The internal mandala is actually seeing the different parts of your body, such as your head and your limbs, and visualize them as those hips of the mandala or the parts of the mandala, and offering them. And then we have the secret and the vastness mandala, which is very important in Tantra. So, for example, if someone is a yogi who is practicing, let's say, Yamantaka, then having cultivated the clear appearance and the divine pride of the deity, enters union with a consort. So it's in the aspect of male and female deities in union. And through this union generates the pristine wisdom of great bliss and emptiness. And that becomes the secret and the vastness offering. Also in Tantra, as we say, we can visualize different parts of the body, such as, for example, your skin, the different parts of the body, the flesh, the blood, and so forth. You imagine them as the various hips of the mandala and offer them. Okay, so anyway, that would have to do for the mandala offering. Otherwise, it can be very extensive on its own. Okay, so it continues after offering the mandala, whichever is suitable, and follow with further offerings to those abiding with thrones and clouds and so forth. So we make further offerings. Then it says, in the middle part of the practice, recite the general confession 3 times. So we can do the general confession. Again, it's confession of negativity. We can recite the 100-syllable mantra. So we have the beginning of the verses here: under the control of attachment, anger, ignorance, up to the point, dedicate to the attainment of enlightenment. And then after that it says, thereafter, with a subdued mind, melodiously recite the Lam Rim prayer, opening the door to the supreme path. So this is the Lam Rim prayer for the lineage masters of the Lam Rim. It is something that it used to be recited in Tibet, and it's now also recited. As it says here, do not hurry this to go quickly through the names. It's recited with a subdued mind, meaning slowly and melodiously, so that you have the opportunity to reflect on the meaning of what you are reciting. Okay, having done this, follow your request that they depart. The recipients of your offerings return to their natural abode. So whatever type of visualization you have established of a field of accumulation, whether you have all the lamas kind of like piled up, or you have them in the market formation, or you have one figure encompassing all objects of refuge, or whether you have this visualization here where we have the root guru in the aspect of Guru Shakyamuni, surrounded with the lineage of extensive deed, of profound view, of blessed conduct, and so forth. Whichever formation you have, then at the end you request them to depart. So as it says here, following your request, they depart. And then it says, whether you are practicing in 4 or 6 sessions, the request to depart is made in the final session. This is the preliminary to relying on the spiritual teacher. So since this is the Lam Rim, and the first and most important subject is to properly rely on the Guru, in this section, we meditate on the Guru. As we said here, you might have a few gurus that are very important to you. Let's say you have 4 or 5 of very important gurus, but amongst them, you have to identify one as being the most kind. So how you make this decision is whose lama's advice and instruction is the one that has the biggest effect, the biggest benefit in your mind. They all give you instructions, they all give you advice, but it is usually the advice from one particular Lama that really hits us and makes the difference. So this is the one that we have to recognize as being the most kind. This will be seen as the root guru. And of course, as we said before, this figure will be seen as incorporating or including all other gurus that you have. So you meditate on this guru in exactly the aspect, the physical aspect they have. Do not try to Photoshop them, beautify them, take away any physical faults they might have. Just as they are, and just think very strong faith. I think that whatever advice they do, whatever aspect they show, they do it for my benefit, out of kindness for me. So keep meditating with strong faith until you have tears coming out of your eyes, until your hair is standing on end, because these are the signs that you have generated the realization of the proper way to rely on the root guru. Okay, so it says here you actually meditate on 4 or 6 sessions. Okay, for us, it's quite rare to have the time to meditate on 6 sessions because we're quite busy. However, if you get the time for 6 sessions, do 6 sessions. Otherwise, the most achievable is to have a morning and an evening session, morning between 6 and 7, and then in the evening, find again some time to have another session. So the duration of your sessions is not, we're not going to give you any set time. It can vary anything from 5 minutes to 1 hour. So we mentioned you might get some time in the morning. If you get 1 hour in the morning, you can fit all 4 sessions in this 1 hour. So, you know, your session might be just 5 minutes, and that is enough. You can have 4 times 5-minute sessions during the day. That will be enough. Start your day by visualizing your guru and make your promises to the guru in terms of keeping an ethical, proper, motivation and conduct. And then if you set that in the beginning of the day, then the activities that you carry during the day most probably will be virtues. Or if something non-virtuous happens, you will have the recollection and say, oh, that was not according to what I promised my Lama in the morning to do. That went against, my mode of conduct. So you will be aware of this behavior. Also, at the end of the day, it is very good again to find 5 minutes to meditate, visualize on your guru. You can imagine that you're falling asleep in the lap of the guru and so forth. Again, meditating on the guru as you go to sleep, it's quite good because it brings the blessings of the guru and it guarantees that your sleep becomes a virtuous activity. We know that sleep on its own is changeable mental factor. So it could be virtuous, it could be non-virtuous, it could be neither. But if you influence it with this meditation on the guru and you receive the blessings of the guru as you go to sleep, then it becomes a virtuous activity. Okay, so all of these were preliminaries to relying on the spiritual teacher. Okay, so then it says how to rely on a spiritual mentor. The best way to rely on a spiritual teacher is to practice analytical meditation upon his excellent qualities and his beneficial function in your spiritual life. So we have mentioned here of analytical meditation that is very important in the Lam Rim, all the way from the very beginning, the first subject, to how to properly rely on the teacher, up to reaching the state of Buddhahood. Analytical meditation is very important. Now, bear in mind, you can carry out analytical meditation focusing on good qualities or analytical meditation focusing on the fault of a situation. Here, when you meditate on the guru, please do not practice analytical meditation on the faults. Practice analytical meditation on the good qualities. So to give you an example, you can perform placement meditation or analytical meditation on your mind. When you practice placement meditation on your mother, all you have to do is to visualize your mother and place the mind in there. But when you practice analytical meditation on your mother, there is quite a lot to consider. So you can start thinking how kind the mother has been to you from the very beginning, from the moment of conception, during those first 9 months during pregnancy. Then how she took care of you just from the moment she gave birth to you, when you were totally hopeless as a newborn baby, how she made sure she gave you the right conditions and the right food for your body to develop, to stimulate your mind, and so forth. And when you reach a certain age, she made sure that she sent you to school and provided everything. And even as an adult, you might be an adult right now, and your mother might be an old person, but she still gives you advice in terms of, how to best go through your life and so forth. So just as we can contemplate on the kindness of the mother on all these occasions, we can perform meditation recalling the great kindness of the guru. The guru has come here only for my sake, only to benefit me. Due to the power of the 3 poisons in my mind since beginningless time, I am left behind. Others have met gurus, Buddhas, and so forth. They have progressed, they left, but I'm left here behind. And this guru has come here. Everything that the guru does is for my sake, for my benefit. Mm-hmm. So meditate like this, and don't focus your mind thinking, oh, this guru likes money, this guru likes this guru likes that. Okay, don't look for faults. So then it says, consider the countless ways in which he is kind to you. He is the root of all attainment, the source of all goodness in this and future lives, the doctor who eradicates the disease of mental disturbances with the medicine of Dharma. So we say that the guru is the root of all attainments, they're all siddhis, the common and supreme. There are many common siddhis, meaning many common powers that you can develop by relying on the guru. Things such as eradicating disease in this life, or acquiring wealth, and many different other types of power. The supreme siddhi refers to obtaining the state of Buddhahood. That would be preceded by those high realizations of bodhicitta, of the 5 paths, of the 10 grounds, and so forth. Okay, so he's the root of all attainment. He's the source of all goodness in this and future lives. So all goodness here means the well-being, the happiness that you will experience in this life and all your future lives. So when we look at a teacher, let's say an ordinary teacher who teaches in the school, and they do it, they just hold a class for 45 minutes. They will deal with you for 1 semester. They will teach you 1 subject, and they are paid to do that. All right. You would not deny the fact that they are a teacher because they are teaching you something. However, this is a different thing from the spiritual teacher who is totally taking care of you, who has the responsibility of changing your mind until you reach a state of enlightenment. Right? So there's a bigger effect. Yeah, okay, we are not bad-mouthing all the teachers out there in all the schools and universities, but some of them, they are just for the salary, just waiting for the time to pass, right? Some, not all. So then we have this analogy which says the Lama is like the doctor who eradicates the disease of mental disturbances with the medicine of Dharma. Okay, so we have the example here of the doctor and the patient. We are the patient and the guru is the doctor. So the main disease that we suffer is self-cherishing, which is a very serious condition. And then in addition to this, we suffer from the 3 poisons. There is no external doctor and no external medicine that can eradicate our self-cherishing and our afflictions. The only way to do it is by relying on the instructions of the guru, and then ourselves apply to practice and meditation, and through meditation improve and purify our mind bit by bit. So it is very much like the doctor who prescribes a medicine, because the guru prescribes a certain practice, gives you advice in order to follow this. So just as in the case of an ordinary doctor who gives us some medicine to take care of our headache or whatever illness we have, and we think, oh, this is very kind, very good doctor. So similarly, for the guru who gives us instructions, we have to consider the kindness. So it says the instruction that the guru gives eradicates the disease of mental disturbances with the medicine of Dharma. So they're trying to remove the suffering that we experience due to our afflictions. Okay, so it continues by saying, although you have wandered in samsara since beginningless time, never before did you meet a spiritual teacher. Or if you did meet one, you did not correctly follow their teachings, for you are not yet a Buddha. Think, I have now met a spiritual guide and will try to practice as pleases him. So since beginningless time, due to the power of karma and afflictions, we have been going from life after life in samsara, beginning with the main cause of all this, of course, is our ignorance. However, we have the opportunity to listen, reflect, and meditate on the advice that the guru has given us. So, of course, that means that, first of all, we must find a guru, rely on the guru, and then listen carefully and try to practice according to the instruction. The situation we're in is either because we did not have the opportunity to meet a guru, or if we did meet a guru, we didn't practice according to the instruction we received. Okay, so if we do not follow the instruction that is given to us, it's not the fault of the teacher, it's not the fault of the instruction, it's our own fault that we are left in the situation we are. So as you see here, we conclude by thinking, I have now met a spiritual guide and will try to practice as pleases him. Okay, so as it says here, it's more kind to give a bowl of simple food to someone dying of hunger than to give a handful of golden coins to someone who has every luxury. So it's an analogy here to understand the kindness of the guru. If you give, let's say, a gold item, something made out of gold, to someone who is extremely rich, right? They're not really impressed. And to be honest, this is not a great act of kindness. This person can afford to buy everything. And you're not making a difference in their life if you just give them another gold artifact. But if you meet someone who is starving, who is about to die of starvation, and offer food to a starving person, you make a huge difference in the life of that person. You save them having to die from famine. So even a very simple food, in the case of starvation, makes a huge difference. So, of course, at some point, we will be able, when we progress along the path, and we have developed the qualities well, like in the first ground, the second ground. At this point, you can directly meet the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas. You can directly meet Manjushri, and they can give you instruction. Once you are that developed, that is not a question. The issue is right now at our state. Why can we not meet them? Why can you not meet Manjushri? Why can you not meet the Buddha and receive instructions? We cannot meet them due to our obscurations. We cannot meet them because we have all this karma and affliction weighing down on us. We have not worked on our accumulation. We have not worked on our purification. The story of Master Asanga, who was on retreat for 12 years before he had a vision of Maitreya, indicates that. Because Maitreya, Asanga said, where have you been? I've been meditating on you for 12 years. And Maitreya said, I was here from the first day. You just could not see me. So it is like this. When we progress and we are high on the realizations, we can meet them. But now we can't. So it says, for this reason, it is said that your personal spiritual mentor is kinder than even Buddha himself. The 5 states, the self-born Buddha is a being gone to perfection, but kinder than Buddha is your own teacher, for he personally gives you the oral teachings. Contemplate how your guru is kinder than all the Buddhas of the past, present, and future. So it is like this. The guru is kinder than all the Buddhas. However, keep into mind that the Guru can manifest in whichever aspect is appropriate to the disciples. So he can appear, the Buddha can appear in an ordinary aspect. For us, though, the kindest person is the Guru. Okay, so one might wonder, what does it mean? Why do we say that the Guru is kinder than the Buddha? The Guru and the Buddha, there's no difference between them in terms of qualities. However, there is difference in terms of kindness, because the Guru is the one who comes to directly interact with us, directly, personally give us teachings. And so from this point of view, they are kindness than the Buddha. Okay, so it says here, to receive spiritual instructions, Buddha made offerings of possessions, service, and practice. For example, in a previous life, he offered 100,000 pieces of gold to a teacher to receive a half verse. If there is birth, there is death. Stopping this process is bliss itself. So we can find the different stories from the string of previous lives of the Buddha in different texts. They are extensive, more condensed. The shorter ones are the Jataka tales. And in one of those previous lives, it is said that the then Bodhisattva offered 100,000 pieces of gold just to receive a couple of lines, so half a verse, not a very extensive teaching. The teaching, these, 2 lines, where the lines that says, if there is birth, there is death, the first line. So that indicates that if you have been born, you have been born through karma and affliction. And if that is the case, death is inevitable. If you are born in this way, you will definitely die. And then the second line says, stopping this process is bliss itself. So stopping the process refers to identifying what are the causes that bring up this birth, which is all the karma, all the afflictions, all the ignorance. So if you stop those things, cessation of those things is bliss, is happiness. So Geshe was commenting, this universal truth that if there is birth, there is death, especially when we got coronavirus. That was a big eye-opener, isn't it? And especially for rich people, privileged people, who up to this point always felt that their wealth protected them or put them in a different situation than everybody else. But the thing with coronavirus, it was like suddenly we were all equal. We were all equalized. And you would find the richest person next to a poor person in the hospital, just suffering with the same symptoms. So I guess I was saying, I think that due to Corona, perhaps some of those very rich and very privileged people got an insight of this state of we're all equal in this. All right. So if you have time, if you have a question, just one. We have time for one.
I just wonder if the guru has to be alive. If the guru has passed, can we still rely on the guru?
Okay, yeah. So even if you have established a relationship with someone that you consider to be your spiritual teacher, and then that person passes away, so they're not alive anymore, you can still meditate on them. You can meditate on their kindness, and definitely have the aspiration to meet again the Yansi, the reincarnation of that guru, and receive teachings again from the reincarnation and so forth. Now, there is this detail when we do the visualization of the merit field. If the guru has passed away, you visualize an empty throne. So you leave an empty seat, which is for the ones who are departed. And then Geshe also went into explaining a bit, because, when the guru passes away, and then there's always this need to reconnect. So we're looking for the Yansi, we're looking for the reincarnation. And one might wonder, how would I know this is the right reincarnation? Okay. So with the reincarnation, of course, from our side, we don't know what is the level of realization of bodhicitta or emptiness in the mind of the guru. But when the Yansi comes and they start teaching, you just basically want to examine their speech. Is what this Lama now teaching me, is it in accordance let's say here we're doing Lam Rim, right? So is it in accordance with the teachings of the Buddha? Is it in accordance with the teachings of Lama Tsongkhapa? Is it in accordance with the Lam Rim lineage? So if they're doing this, then, that's a good indication. It's a good reincarnation.